Welcome to the Tied Together podcast, where we feature everyday people doing extraordinary things. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share so others can join in on the conversation too. Today's guest is our first guest across the pond in Northampton, England. James discovered his love of poetry in his 20s and has now published 5 books, has his work performed by celebrities, and is raising mental health awareness all over the UK and in the US. He's made his books available in schools and libraries and hosts poetry workshops to inspire and expand the art form where he lives. An early love of books and 20 years living on Poets Corner foreshadowed a passion he didn't see coming. Please welcome the author of In Between the Lines, James McInerney. Welcome, James.
Hello.
Hiya.
Thank
you for joining today. I really appreciate you. So, in doing my research on you, I see that you started doing poetry in your 20s. To backtrack a little bit, what were your dreams for yourself younger than that, as a child, a teenager?
At the time when I was at school, we never really had, careers were never a thing when I was at school. Not that I'm showing my age, but to be fair, it was never a thing. Not like children have got now, so many chances and choices and options now. And to be fair, when I was at school, the furthest you probably got was college. University was way off radar, and you were never pushed to university. I did college. I went through so many different things I wanted to do. Catering, I wanted to be a cook, because I loved cooking. And then when I actually did catering, I hated it. I just went through different things, and I think you weren't encouraged at school to actually have aspirations. All they were interested in was you just getting through the school. And that's just how it was. And kids are so lucky nowadays with so many options. I just wish I'd had that at the time. No, I didn't have any dreams. To be fair, I wanted to leave school and get a job to earn money. That for me was money, being an adult and kind of like having money in my pocket, and that meant maybe a house of my own, or it just your kind of dreams were money orientated in those days, because you didn't think about careers, you didn't think about that, and to be fair, jobs were easy to get when I was younger. Nowadays, the lack of jobs, every job you'd apply for, 50 people now will apply for the same job. Then if you apply for a job, you're guaranteed an interview them days. So it's a different world to when we're now, and full of more opportunity, but jobs not so much. So I had no real career aspirations. I had nothing, just to earn money and then see where that took me. Obviously didn't know it was going to take me here at the time, but it did.
Yeah.
And kind of here I am.
Absolutely. So when you did start writing, or discovered that you did have a love for poetry, what was your first motive in doing that? Was it for you? Did you want notoriety? What was the first thing you wanted when you started?
I just started writing for fun, because I didn't think of myself as a poet. I didn't really know what poets were, because all we knew about was Shakespeare at school. We never actually had poetry school. I didn't actually like poetry school, probably because we just learned about Shakespeare. That's all they did. They taught us about Shakespeare and the old-fashioned poets. So I had no idea, but it kind of just fell into it. I fell into poetry, and I wrote for my own amusement. And then I started posting on, I don't know if you remember them, news groups on email.
On what?
Sure, on email.
Oh, yeah,
There was Outlook, and basically you scroll down on the sidebar, there was news groups, and you could search different news groups like poetry. And I used to just put my thing on like the message board, and then people started commenting and liking it, and I thought, okay, so that spurred me on. And then from there, that was pre-Facebook, pre-Twitter, pre-anything, and there was no social sites.
Right.
I had to plug in. You couldn't use the telephone because it would have a noise on it. That kind of where you'd plug in, you'd hear it dialing up, and that was kind of that was my experience of the internet. But I just kind of liked the idea that you could put words out there. started doing that and started building quite a following, and then Facebook and everything hit, and then it was wow, okay, and I kind of hit them ground running with those, and then straight away it was put that personal poems on there, and just kind of got into the idea that with the internet you could do more things, you could search more things, you could look in your local area and see what poetry was doing, and you could kind of start talking to people online, and that was how it started really for me. I didn't think about it, and I kind of embraced the social sites as they were born. And started from day one. Now social sites, they're 10 a penny. There's so many of them, you wouldn't know where to begin. But to be fair, over the years I've used so many social sites. I'm still back to the core, which is Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and occasionally Tumblr. But other than that, I think there's so much option nowadays to do so many great things, and that's kind of how I started on the social sites.
Yeah. Now we're going to skip around just a little bit. So you got into poetry, and then you were just doing it for yourself, enjoyed it, you put your work out there, and other people enjoyed it. To skip forward to present day, what do you think about who you are right now would surprise that beginning writer that you were?
I think probably because not of how great I've done, but the things I've achieved through poetry that I probably didn't think I'd ever achieve, and also how I stuck at it. I think because there are many times when, poetry is kind of a hard sell anyway. If it was prose, it's different, but poetry is a niche market anyway. And there were many times where I thought, I'm just going to give up, because I kind of felt as though I was putting it all out there and not getting anything back, and it was a lot of hard work, and you could spend days writing a poem, put it on, and it's just glossed over, and you think, I'm not a guy who likes likes and comments, but you think you put a lot of effort into it, people just scroll by it and think that's it. And there was a lot of times when I thought to myself, what am I doing this for? I knew I was doing it for me, but then when you just kind of think to yourself, you want that feedback online, and I think I felt I needed that feedback, but now I don't. I think the difference I would look back now is I've grown so much. I've kind of needed feedback and then gone beyond it and realised actually that I'm kind of like not that person anymore. And I think I'd be happy with myself as well because of the project that I run, because I've gone beyond writing poetry and actually producing books to actually helping other people. And I think for me, I've kind of transcended poetry, and it's given me a whole new view on things of doing this project. And actually, my goal as a child was I always wanted to do something to change the world. And maybe the world is different to other people. You might think it's a massive thing, but actually little things can also change people's world. And I think if I look back on myself now, I think actually you're going to love writing poetry, but actually you're going to do something better than poetry, and you're going to help others. And I think for me, that was all. I always knew I was going to do something, but I never knew how I was going to get there. But actually the poetry helped me get there, because the stuff I wrote over the years has been incorporated into the project, and they're the quotes that you see. So there were stepping stones, and I had to go through those stepping stones to get where I am now. So it all mattered.
Yeah, like a doorway or a gateway poetry for you. Yeah. Talk to me about what you mentioned about wanting to quit so many times. I think everybody goes through a quitting moment, whether it's a job or a passion or whatever. How were you able to, or what was the process like for you to go from I want to quit to getting back to writing?
I'm actually a positive person anyway. So for me, I think with me, I've done so much with it that every time I thought I'm going to quit, and I've done the things I'm going to quit now, that's it. I've always thought, look back and see how much I've done. And I think I can't quit too much. I've come too far. To do all this would mean that all that meant nothing if I quit now. And I look back, and then for me, every time I thought I've had enough, something kind of happened which kept me going. So I think nothing's happening, things are not happening the way I want them to. and then I would suddenly, out of the blue, as though I'm meant to be doing this, something would come up, and it would be like, oh, that's, you know, and it was always as though, you know, I was meant to keep doing this, even though I hated poetry. The fact that every time I thought I was going to quit, something actually came up and pushed me on and said, no, you're not quitting. And I kind of feel as though that led to the project. And I felt like this is my end game, not end game as I'm over, but end game of I've done all that because of this. This is what had to happen.
Right.
So, and I actually had a lot of support anyway from fans. And, I went on quitting, like people do on Facebook, and people say go on social sites, I've had enough. And I've got a lot of support in my inbox. And I think you don't realise your fans are there until something like that happens.
Yeah.
They take you for granted as much as you do them. But actually, when it comes to the crunch of actually you having a massive meltdown or you want to leave, they're still there. They've always been there. You just don't notice them until it really matters.
Yeah.
And so I had a good fan base, and I still have, and I've got good support that are there. So I think everything just kept me going. And I am a positive person, and when things go wrong and things don't work, I don't take kind of no for an answer. I work out how to get to there another way around.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think if one door closes, it doesn't mean that option is closed for you doing that thing. It just means you've got to go a different way. And that keeps me going. It's like when something massive fails, it's like, oh my God, it's not that. It's a case of I've just got to go a different way at it. And I've always got to my end point. It's just I've had to go the long way around sometimes. And actually you appreciate it more because you've had to put more work in.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I'm gaining knowledge from that myself. We all go through moments where we want to quit, like I said, and you just have to figure it out for yourself. You've mentioned the project, and I am aware of the project, but for those of the viewers that don't know what the project is, explain that for me, please.
Yeah, so obviously I wrote books, and I used to go to comic cons and meet fans and do things like that. And that was great to a point. Then you, as a person, you want to grow to the next level. And I always loved the idea of a world where you could walk down the street and see positive messages. Since the world, anyway, we live in the media, we're bombarded on our news feeds with negative news. No news is ever good news, it's always bad. I was fed up of seeing that. And over the years, as I worked on this, put my work online and the books, people always used to comment, I needed this today, I read this. And even if it wasn't a positive piece that I wrote and it was a bit depressing, people like to know, for example, if you're depressed yourself, the last thing you want to read is something happy. You want to connect to someone who's going through what you're going through. So I would hate if I was feeling depressed to suddenly see a happy piece. That will get you better. It won't. You need to kind of read someone's story that's going through. So when I wrote even the negative things or the bad things, people used to say, I need to read that. And that helped me. So that gave me an idea of what if we go beyond the internet and go into the real world with these. So in 2018, I went to London and I saw the service information boards. And I just thought, I wonder if we could get like poetry on there. I didn't think of the project at the time. I just thought it'd probably great to have my work on the underground. Bit self-involved. But it was just another thing I wanted to do and get beyond the internet into the real world. But then we did it on the London Underground and it kind of worked. We spoke to people and everything just worked at the time.
Yeah.
And the thing with that, the London Underground, I kind of messaged them and said, would it be okay to have kind of work out there? And didn't think anything of it. And from there, overnight, so I got a tag on the internet, on Instagram, and what happened was, it was them sharing. I was like, oh, wow, I didn't think it would happen. And what happened was, every day from then, basically, it went on different internets. From the internet, it went on to different stations, and I was like, oh wow, okay. And I thought this has got actually some legs to it. Right. And then people were taking pictures as boards and sharing it online. I love this. And then we went from there to train stations. We went to Stansted Airport, and it was like, wow, okay. So all of 2019, we basically went across the entire UK, rolling the project out, having Zoom meetings, talking to people, and kind of putting the idea of the project of having positive messages on display. And they loved it, and it's something fresh, something new that no one had seen. And then, so all 2019 we went across the UK, and then in the end of 2019 we went to America for the project and did it there, and it went down really well in America, and then Australia. And then obviously we were pushing with loads of campaigns for 2020. We had festivals, we had everything. And then obviously COVID. And we got to about February, end of Feb, and the people we were working with basically said we have to put on a hold. So we went over to the social side, worked with those people online, Twitter, Instagram, share the messages, keep it going. And now we're kind of back at full swing, doing great things in London, doing great things back around the world until we get locked down again, unfortunately.
Right.
Yeah. So,
right.
But the project is about, the equivalent of reading your diary in public. And the reason I did that was because I wanted to break the stigmatism and the taboo-ness of mental health, because people who read those messages online and on the actual general public and see people liking them and taking pictures of them, it means that we've knocked that wall of it's taboo to think that way. And it's like jumping in the deep end straight away. And I think the only way you're going to get rid of that stigmatism of people being afraid of sharing their messages is to basically put it in the public space.
Yeah.
They are positive and empowering, but their feelings, and they're talking about it's okay. It's okay to feel that way, not to hide the fact that you're sad or upset and all these things you're feeling. So it was to break down the stigmatism of mental health in a kind of public way and a dramatic way. And so we've done it. We've been on skyscrapers with it. We've been everywhere with it, and we've also been used behind the scenes in the office to kind of help people in the offices as well, because as well as being in the public, people need motivating in the office. You go to work, you see a lovely message office, makes you feel better. So that was the idea of the project, and it's still going great now, and we're almost 2 years in.
Yeah.
So it's just, and I work with some amazing people, and and it's been real fun, and we've actually got campaigns booked until mid 21, and some big projects coming up, and like the second we get beyond COVID fully, or we've got stuff coming up.
Yeah. You mentioned in one of your interviews that sorrow is the greatest feeling, something to that effect. Do you still feel that way? I think that was years ago you had mentioned that, but do you still feel like the greatest feeling is sorrow?
I think the best kind of I look at it from emotional side of things. So for me, when I write, I want to feel emotions and stuff like that. So I think sadness and sorrow is the best thing to write, because it's got the most mixed emotions in it. Happiness is easy. Happiness is easy. I could write loads of happy stuff, but sorrow is so much emotion in there, and there's so much to delve into and look at and kind of understand and pick at and work out. That for me, I mean, I used to think that I'm kind of like too much depressed stuff, and I kind of felt I was drawn to sadness and sorrow because I think people shy away from it. I think people hide from it. The worst thing you can do when it comes to if you're depressed, ignore how you feel. You should never ignore how you feel. You have to own and acknowledge. Doing that, you understand what you're going through, and for me, that was the best way. Is to basically, it's like facing your demons, isn't it? You don't hide from your demons. You them, and you understand them, and you rationalize them, and when you do that, they're not as scary. So I mean, and then from a writing point of view, it's the best kind of emotions in there to kind of delve into.
Yeah, yeah. I love that you really pay attention to mental health and the sadness of people in general, because people do get sad. We all do. We get sad, we get depressed, and things like that. And you're really highlighting it. And the way I receive it is that when you put your work out there and you show a sad emotion, you help people not to feel alone. Like they're the
Mm,
only ones going through something. And as you said, it's like a diary. In reading your work myself, a lot of the things you write, I can relate to. I'm like, wow, it's
mm,
really good that you're able to put this on paper and make it so relatable for such a broad audience. But I love that you're not. I love that you're making it so that people don't feel alone in their sorrow and they don't feel weird
mhm.
and abnormal. Why is that so important to you? Have you had experiences of your own where you wish you had somebody like you, or what is that about?
Yeah. Well, a long time ago, I suffered depression, and it wasn't massively. It was just a combination of things where I was involved in a car accident,
Mm,
and there was loads of different things. I had problems with my daughter, and she almost died, and it was quite. It was, but at the time, because she two things. She choked on something almost. The end of a lolly stick, lolly
mm,
fell off, it stuck down her throat, and she had epilepsy, and she still got it. Had a seizure, and it was 45 minutes, and all those things. We just kind of went through them and kind of didn't stop.
mm,
And years down the line, what happened was those things come back and hit me like a sledgehammer. At the time, I didn't think about them. Yes, it was scary and daunting, but at the time, you got on with your life. You didn't have time to stop. And then it's like whiplash. You know, you're in a car accident. You don't feel the whiplash till maybe weeks later
right.
sometimes, and then you can't move or you can't. So for me, yeah, I mean, I suffered depression, and actually poetry helped me. And a lot of my early books, actually, like In Between the Lines, was stuff that I was feeling at the time. But I was very conscious at that time, being an early writer, of everything depressing. I didn't think at the time. I thought maybe I need to change how I write, because I was worried coming across as, oh, everything James writes depressing.
Mm,
But then I didn't realise at the time actually what good it was doing for other people. And like I say, when you put things out there and people, even if it's sad, I almost felt bad about actually saying to people, I love writing sad things, because I felt like I shouldn't be. I felt like I was coming across as depressive, and I'm a happy guy, you know. People are like, why do you write sad? You must be sad, or what? I'm not. I just like writing sad things, because you've gone through a lot in your life, and you've got a lot of life experiences, and you want to write it down. And that was when I wasn't writing for people; I was writing for me. And I think that was always the case. But yeah, I think I felt really guilty about constantly thrusting sadness and sorrow into people's lives. And then I realised, actually, when people used to comment and say, "I love this," I think, "Why do you love this? It's depressing." But actually, and then I realised, I learned that people actually need to read sadness when they're sad.
mhm.
Um, if you, it's like I say, if you're sad, you don't want to read that someone's happy and their life's great. You want to read that someone's going through what you're going through. So, and I think we can all relate as humans to that, in the fact that we we are helped by people when that we understand that they're going through what we're going through, and it makes life seem as though actually you're not on your own.
Mhm.
And I think that's the thing. People can kind of take it all in and bottle it all up and think, I'm scared, I'm the only one feeling this, and you're not. So that's kind of really.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of like when you're having the worst day ever. Maybe you lost your job or your pet died, and someone says to you, "Well, you can get another pet one day, or your pet's in a better place." That's not what you want. Sit down and cry with me. Let's be sad
Yeah.
together and give
Well,
me a moment.
I think with the general, as human beings, we try and, well, it's different now, but in the old days, people used to not focus on sad things, you know, and they'd think like you get a new pet, like you say, that kind of gets over it. They kind of glossed over what you were feeling as though it was insignificant.
Hmm.
And then people never got over it, and especially with America. I mean, I deal with a project over there. It's the case. Even still, mental health is taboo. are there, and it's a case of pull up your bootstraps, get on with it. In the UK, when I started dealing with American companies, I assumed it was the same as the UK. The UK is very hot on mental health awareness.
Okay.
And you've got celebrities talking about it. But when I started talking to American charities and things with the project, they were like, we just can't get anything done in terms of mental health. Like banging your head against a brick wall. I just assumed it was the same as the UK. And it was an eye-opener for me, actually, that it's still very taboo in America, as in, I've heard so many different stories from people I've talked to about how it is still hard. But I suppose in my naivety, I just assumed it was the same as the UK because they're pretty hot on it over here.
But tell me about that, like what it's like in the UK, because most of my viewers, of course, are going to be in America, so we don't know what it's like over there. How is mental health received? Are there a lot of billboards? When people go to therapy, is it like supported rather than frowned upon? What are the differences?
Yeah, I think it's like the people I spoke to. I mean, obviously, you've got to look at the social side of things. Like the difference between us, I suppose, and yourselves is you've got guns.
You got what? I'm sorry.
You've got guns, kind of weapon. For us, that's alien to us, like to have weapons. And I suppose everywhere is different. But I just think in kind of England is they have kind of have a lot of celebrities talking about their personal experiences, and that opens doors for people like this project, where basically they're afraid of how they felt, and I think. By celebrities doing it, it kind of made it less taboo over here. And there's a lot of things going over here, kind of like special days that we have over here, like Mental Health Awareness Week, Mental Health Day, and Purple Tuesday, which is for disability. There's a lot of events happening in the UK. I mean, obviously, you would know what it's like over there from your personal experiences as well. How different would you say it is to the UK?
Well, I don't know anything really about the UK when it comes to mental health at all. I don't really pay attention to,
but what are your experiences? Yeah.
And so in the US, my experiences are, we are starting to talk about mental health. You have some celebrities that are talking about mental health, but it's not very widely accepted, I think. People are not really very receptive and understanding. You're starting to get that. But when it comes to males, going to therapy, specifically males, going to therapy is kind of frowned upon. But even for a female, I've been to therapy myself more than once. And I remember I was at work. I don't remember who we were talking about, but one of my coworkers said, yeah, that guy's going to therapy. He's probably nuts. When of course going to therapy doesn't make you nuts, but that is the conversation around taking care of your mental health. Like you said, you were when your daughter was ill and you had the car accident and all these things were piling up. I think the norm for ourselves and what people expect of you is for you to keep moving. It's not for you to stop and reflect and take in what's happened to you and really process it. People expect you to keep moving. And if you sit down and crumble and cry about it, they think there's something wrong with you when actually it's very normal. So, I mean, that's my experience.
With that, I think with that as well, like for me, what they tend to do, like you say with that, if you especially as a guy, and maybe and kind of anyone really, they try to give you drugs. So antidepressants, as though is the answer to everything. And all it does is it suppresses. It's what it does. I was on those for a while, and actually I willingly stopped them on my own because they were actually making me worse. They made me feel drunk all the while. They made me cloudy. It was just a horrible experience. And that was all it was in those days. That was their way of dealing with mental health. Now there's so many options available for like groups and actually talking to people online. So the whole world has kind of changed at different stages, but I say it's very much more talked about now. And I found that, and I've actually learned a lot with this project. by doing this project that I didn't know about mental health. Obviously, having been through depression myself doesn't actually give you the answers to actually what's going on in the real world. Like, and I actually started this project, and my eyes were open quite a bit as to how, actually all the great things that are going on to help mental health. And it's a lot of things throughout the year. And like you say, it's still taboo, but it's not probably for men, because men don't show their feelings, and that kind of, men don't cry and stuff like that. But I think that will change eventually, and that's why I actually love this project, because what we're doing is we're doing great things, and I will help someone from the other side of the world who I've never met or never will meet, but words are actually helping that person change their day. And I think if we all did that as humans and helped each other, the world would be a very different place.
Right.
But we have that ability within us anyway to do it. But a lot of people just don't exercise that ability. I probably couldn't tell you now who half of my neighbours are in my street. Yet if you look back in the old days when my mum and dad, they knew everyone. In the street. We are very isolated in that way. But I think we're quite fortunate to have the internet and be able to talk to people on the other side of the world. So it just depends I'm not quite sure how the future is going to go, but it can only get better, hopefully.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So we've touched on a few of your projects and things that you're doing. You have the poetry project. You have poetry workshops, where you're helping aspiring artists or poets and teaching them to, really grow into themselves. I've heard you say that you're not teaching them necessarily to write like you, but to figure out how they want to write. But you also mentioned you're a dad, you work, you do all these things. You're busy. You have a lot on your plate. Yeah. But why is poetry important enough to still do it, even though your plate's so full?
I think I do it because it's all I know, really. I've been writing probably since I started actually writing in 1998. And I actually started writing because the reason I started writing as well is because I love in a film, when you watch a scene and it's dramatic and that music in the background, that music away, that scene would not be dramatic. So I started to go on internet and find like those songs at Apple, whatever it was, and find those tracks to those albums. And I started listening to them and then kind of writing poetry to, because I love the emotions in that track. And I've just kind of been hooked since then. And everything like with the books and going to comic cons, meeting fans, and working with actors, TV, and doing this project, it's all kind of kept me going. I don't think it was hard to keep it because I love poetry. Now I do, but I think I've had many things where every time I've always diversified into other things to keep it relevant, instead of just I could just release a book a year and that's it, and I could do that. Great, that's great. I've written a book, but I just kind of feel like I wanted to do more, and I'm happy writing books and I love it. But I always, as a human being, I've always wanted to go to the next level and do something selfless, which is the project. So that's kind of like, and the project keeps me busy, and the project and working with actors from, the TV and film, and networking with them and sending over work and having them record it and then seeing them act it. And it's like, that to me is like great, you're seeing people you watch on TV voice your words from the project and do it in a dramatic way so it can help people. Kind of a life box ticked, but I still feel as though there's so much more to do. And with this project, I started it this year, would have been amazing, but we got held back with COVID. But my dreams are still to do so much more with it, and I will, because I am passionate about doing things, and I love being busy. I just kind of, I actually decided and actually thought that depression, a way of kind of stopping depression, is keeping yourself busy. My mind is always active, so if I stopped everything and didn't do things, I'd probably slip into depression. I know that sounds weird, but because I've had it before, I am more prone to it again, by statistically. But I like to keep my kind of brain active.
Mm-hmm.
And these, even though it tires me out and it's a busy day, it keeps my brain stimulated. And I think people that kind of slip into depression are the kind of people that kind of have nothing to keep their mind busy, and you're not doing anything with yourself, and it's very easy to slip into depression.
Yeah, not that you're a doctor by any stretch, but I'm wondering what the difference could be between not being busy and actually taking the time to realize that something is bothering you. Um,
Mm.
what do you think about the differences between the two? Do you think you should take the time to sit down and say, hey, this is bothering me, and really sit in that? Or do you think you should just power through and keep busy, keep writing, keep building, whatever it is that you do?
I think a bit of both. I've always you have to be in tune with how you feel. And I think if you've been through depression, I mean, you'll know on days when you can. There's different. It's very different to a Monday
Yeah.
feeling when you think Monday to depression.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a big difference. People use the word "I'm depressed" without realizing I'm depressed this Monday. That's not depression. Depression is where depression to the extremes where people basically kill themselves because they don't see any interest in life, and they don't think life's going to get better. That's not I hate Mondays.
No.
So I think no. So I think it is about knowing how you feel inside, and if something feels really off, that you can't shake, and there's things like that. I mean, everyone has days where things get them down, and you do, in a sense, you have a bad day, you think just power through it, power through it. And the thing you say, stuff, tomorrow's going to be better. And that's a defense mechanism, I suppose, to not having to deal with it. But you would know the difference if it was just a Monday blues to depression. And I think I would know the difference too. And yes, there have been times I've felt depressed, but then it's all about reflecting as well of how many great things you've done. And sometimes, a lot of the times, you have to self-motivate yourself. Say, look, you feel depressed, but look at the great things you've done. And sometimes you just, you have to, and I do pause and I do stop and I think to myself and reflect. And it's just life. I think, like I say, if you've been through depression, you'll know the difference between that and the Monday blues.
Oh, yeah. I definitely know the difference between depression and Monday blues. I've had my share of it. Nobody wants it, but it comes anyway for most of us. But I understand what you mean about staying busy. So I'll give you an example. When before I bought my first house, I've always been very motivated and always wanted to do the next big thing for as long as I could remember. And before I bought my house, I was renting a house. It was the biggest place I had ever rented at the time. It was very nice. I had a stable job. I was making decent money. I had a car. I was good. I didn't really need anything else. And so I was sitting in my bedroom, which was the biggest bedroom I had ever had. And I used to live in a studio apartment in the basement and share the bed with my son. So this was awesome, But I'm sitting in my bedroom and I was so sad. I was so depressed. And I'm like, what is wrong with me? I should be happy. I've got a job. I got this car. I got this house. What's the problem? And I was having a conversation with a friend. He's always going after another goal. And I would always ask him, what's the end game? What's the end game? And he never had an answer. There wasn't an end game. He loved the pursuit. And I thought about it and I said, oh, that's my problem. I don't have anything to do. I felt like I already did it all. There's nothing else to do. So I immediately got myself another goal and I went after it. Now I felt better. So I understand that keep busy kind of thing, because if you're not pursuing anything, then what are you doing,
But then I've read articles where people have been the top of the game. But say, for example, Justin Bieber, you could have number one album, number one single, be a millionaire, multi-millionaire, have tons of fans. You're still depressed. You can still be depressed. And I think people can have everything. It doesn't mean that you're the happiest person in the world.
No.
Look at famous people that have killed themselves, and yet your first response is, "God, they've got all that money, they've got all that fame." Robin Williams, look at that, Robin Williams. Everyone knew Robin Williams. He's got loads of money. He's got everything, yet he killed himself.
Yeah.
And I think people's misconceptions are that, that people have everything, so they should be happy.
That's not
and,
it.
And I think that's not it. You can have everything and still be miserable. It's a state of mind. And like I said, the difference between that state of mind and Monday morning blues, because there is a massive difference. And like, if you do feel where you're getting to that state of mind, then it is a case of pause, reflect. And personally, for me, what I have found, because I've been so busy, I've basically had to look at my schedule and say, you need to take some things away from this, because you're kind of running yourself into the ground. Yes, you've got dreams and aspirations, but they'll still be there. But my kind of real goal was, I've got to be Instagram famous. And we're all guilty of that. But we're all guilty of being, I've had people come up to me, because I do a lot of things now, and they want to be famous overnight.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of world we live in. And it's like, I've been hard grafting at this since, and people would say to me, how have you got that? You're so lucky. It's, no, actually, I've been working my butt off.
So I do want to ask you about that, James. So when I started following you, it was probably over a decade ago. And I was new to Instagram and didn't know who to follow. So I think I typed in authors or poets or something, and you came about, and I just followed you from there. But I never spent a lot of time on Instagram. So I could go years without being on Instagram. But anytime I was on, because I only followed a few people, I'd see you in my feed. And I'd like what I saw and then go away. And then I haven't been on Instagram for a few years now, but now I'm on there a lot. And I went back to your page. I said, I wonder what he's doing. And you had like 10 followers when I followed you initially. And now you've got over 30,000. I say all that to say that there are aspiring writers out there, and they're writing and they're putting their work on Instagram and Facebook, and they have 2 people reading it, 1 like, 10 followers total. What do you say to them when they feel like nobody's reading, nobody's watching?
Yeah, I could save them a lot of time and kind of say to them, don't worry about how many likes you get. I'm guilty of that. I mean, when I first started, I thought, if you got 10,000 likes, you're famous, or people love you, you're popular. It's not the case. It's fake. It's fake in the respect that it just means that 10,000 people click like to the scroll through their newsfeed. So it doesn't mean they'll stop and think, oh my God, I love him. And it's kind of, I built my kind of original when I first started. The more likes I get, the more famous, the more popular I am. And I kind of worked myself into the ground trying to build Instagram up. And I got to about 32,000, and then it leveled out. And then kind of like people who have got 10 million, or you've only got to look at the things and kind of work out the people who've got 10 million. You look at their likes, they've got like 50,000 likes out of 10 million followers. So a lot of their followers are brought. So I kind of looked at that and I thought, I just can't be bothered anymore. I don't care. I'm just basically, I used to be so worried about what I posted, how many likes it got. And even kids nowadays, they remove posts if they don't get many likes. And I just kind of thought, I'm not into any of that anymore. And I kind of just put things on. I didn't care, because for me, you see my stuff on Instagram and Twitter and all that. A lot of my work is done behind the scenes that people never see.
Right.
Like, I work with actors, I network, I do Zoom meetings. I post something on just to let people know what's going on, but majority of my work is done via email. So I'm on my emails all day, I'm having Zoom meetings, I'm having phone calls, I'm doing things behind the scenes. And I don't share everything that I do, because I would just spend all day posting. I kind of look at some things and think, what do I want to post? So I just kind of get at least a post on a day. But I don't really care how many likes it gets, because I'm too busy doing things behind the scene and making things happen and kind of networking. I used to be so much about how many likes, how many followers. I think if you're writing, you're a new writer, and I get new writers kind of message me all the while, can you give me a shout out because I need loads of followers? And I'm like, and also some of them are too scared to post their first post. And I encourage so many writers to say, just post it. Yeah, and that's how I started. I was like, they were like, how do you do it? I've been so scared of putting it on. I just kind of took a leap of faith and put it on. And I know loads of people that but it showed me the work on DMs. It's like, this is amazing. Why not post it? I'm scared.
Yeah.
And it's like, don't be scared, because,
Just do it.
do it.
Do it.
And I think there's a lot of people that don't post because they're scared, and a lot of people that post because they want likes. And I think two things: don't worry about likes, and post because you want to post, not
I
because
think
you're
in
worried
both
about.
of those that they're both versions of that person are worried about what other people think. Period.
To be fair, I used to be that way, and only because I thought, as a society, that that's how I should be. I thought that if I got 50 likes, 200 likes, next I got 500 likes, oh my God, I'm more popular tomorrow. And it's fake. I mean, It is fake. Talk about fake news. It is fake. It doesn't mean a thing. So I kind of took me a while to learn that. But I would say to new people, and actually even at one point, Instagram are going to start removing likes because they were so self-conscious of people actually focused. Yeah, it hasn't happened, but it would have been so great, I think, to take that fear away. But I would just say, like, I started out and I was scared. I would just say, go for it.
Yeah.
And I went on the BBC and they kind of said to me, you need a book out. And I didn't think about a book, and it was just like, just go for it, James, go for it. And I was like, what have I got to lose? And since then, I haven't looked back.
Right. It sounds to me, through listening to you through this whole interview, it sounds to me that you have become more authentically yourself over the years. Would that be an accurate assessment?
Yeah, I think I've had to jump through a lot of hoops and do a lot of learning to get there, really.
Do you think there's a sense of release that you have to do in order to become who you are truly?
I think you have to go through that. I've learned so much about myself, and I've gone down so many wrong paths with my work and social sites. But I think I had to go down them. I think I had to and I've had a lot more no's than yeses, especially with myself as an author, a lot of no's. And, I think I had to have those no's to kind of understand what it meant, so that when I got the yeses, they were so much more important to me than just expecting that everything was going to be a yes.
Yeah, I almost laughed a little bit just now because I had that conversation with my son yesterday. I got a series of no's. I probably got like 12 no's for something that I was looking to do for my nonprofit. And then I got a yes. And I sat and I was like, I know better than this. I know better than to just stop at the no's and feel defeated. And I had that conversation with my son to let him know that there will be a series of no's, but you have to get through those to go through the yeses. So I appreciate what you're saying.
I think it's like you said earlier, what drives you. And I think it is not as though you won't, it's almost as though you won't accept the no's because you believe in yourself so much. So when you get a no, it's not that you're arrogant on the habit. It's not that. I think it's because you believe in yourself so much that actually you believe in what you're doing, that even though you get a no, it doesn't mean it's the end.
No, it doesn't.
Just as that person said no, and if that door closed, it doesn't mean it's the end. I went through that as a person. Every time the door closed, I was like, I'm giving up on this. I've had enough. I've put so much effort into that. And I still get no's now. And I still get things that I work hard on, that I've put a lot of effort into, and then it ends up as nothing. And I'm like, that was a lot of work in that. And it just never happened. But I don't actually give up. I just say, okay, it didn't work. Take that knowledge and move on.
Yeah.
Which is what I always do.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. So I was reading, and God, I know the title in between the lines because I've been seeing it for years. And I can't remember the last one that I'm reading. It's a much shorter one. It's 74 pages.
It's been a few. So it's either Bloom, Red, The Pieces That Collide, Everything I Write About You.
The Pieces
That Collide.
The Pieces That Collide. So good. It's like Pringles. I have no idea if they're Pringles in the UK. Yeah, Pringles, right? Yeah. Okay. I don't know. I haven't been over there. But it's like Pringles. I would tell myself I'm only going to read a few of them. And then I'm like, well, I'll read the next one and I'll read the next one. They're so relatable. They're so beautiful. And I'm not saying that just because I'm interviewing you and I want you to feel like I like your work. I wouldn't have brought it up if I didn't like it. I don't just like it though. I love it. I think it's amazing. It's the type of book I could see myself in my room playing some music, just relaxing. And it is a coffee table book. And I've never never been a fan of coffee table books. And this one is nice. I like that I can just pick it up and put it back down because there's not that commitment to a novel. I love reading novels. That's one of my favorite things to do. But there's not that commitment, and there's no fear of forgetting what the last page was about, because the poems are much shorter and you can digest the whole thing in one sitting. So I love your work, and I love that you stayed persistent. I loved the feeling that I got when I came back upon your page. I was so happy for you, as if I knew you personally. I said, I was really, really happy for you that you stuck with it. And it was something that I could tell you loved when I first encountered you on Instagram. And I love that you just stuck with it, and that it started off, this is what I'm gathering, this is my personal summary to what I've gathered, that this was for you, and this was to help you initially. But the overall feeling that you had was that poetry was a help. And you just had to find out where it was going to help and who it was going to help. But it started that way, and it's going to end that way. And I love everything you're doing. So now that I've given you all your praise.
Go
ahead.
No, I was going to say, it did start off as in, it was personal help for me. And I found, as you would do with a diary, writing down your thoughts, I found that it helped me by writing down how I felt. I didn't think of poetry. I didn't think of books. Like I said, the BBC said you need a book out. I didn't even think of a book. I was just doing it for my own amusement, and it helped me. And then as we started to get to social sites and people started to, I found comments and people relating to it, I just thought, actually, I could help others. And then obviously we carried on writing the books, so I did start doing that. And then the project came, and that helps people in the real world, in general public. So for me, it is a case of trying to keep the two going at the same time, which is a challenge to write a book a year, and at the same time help everyone in the world with the project. But I love that challenge. And like I say, I work with some amazing people and companies and PR companies and organizations. I love doing that thing. I love talking to people. I love reaching out, and I love seeing people's ideas, and I love giving them the project and then them saying, we love this, we want to do this with it, and seeing all the different ways and how creative they get with the project. I just love that kind of aspect of it, and I think I always will. I think it will never change. And at the heart of it is poetry. So it's all that I am, really.
Yeah. Do you enjoy performing your own poetry, or do you prefer that others perform it?
I'm no good at acting. I mean, the thing with me is, in my head, when I write it, I imagine it as you would, like, with the dramatic music behind it and really acting it. I could never do that, which is why I got involved with actors and actresses as a thing. And then I would kind of watch them read it, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. I wrote it, but I'm actually sitting there as a viewer watching someone read my work, but loving what they're doing as in the performance. And I kind of got addicted to that, and I just love the idea of actors performing and actually bringing the emotions that are in the piece to the actual screen. And the reason I did that was because I wanted to do that, because I want to encourage people into poetry, which is why I write and get on and show people what you can do with poetry. I also want people with the mental health side of things, if they don't see the things in the general public and do that, I want them to kind of understand how they're feeling, even if it means they can relate to an actor they see on the TV, which is their favourite actor. So if the messages don't get across through my words, they can get across through an actor they love. And I just like that idea of kind of getting that message across in a different way, but in a different format, which still gets the point across, but they love it because it's their favourite actor from their TV show. But actually the message is getting across as well. So it's just a different way of packaging it up and giving it to the person watching.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about the feeling behind your writing, or the environment you have to create. So for me, when I write, it's a very emotional experience. I don't write poetry. We don't write similar things at all. I'm just speaking about writing itself. It can be an emotional experience. So you have to get into a certain kind of mood, and then maybe break that mood. For you, because you do write more sad poetry, do you have a way of breaking that feeling once you're done, or do you just have clear boundaries? Like once you've put that pencil down, the feeling's over.
I mean, I basically Spotify is my best friend, and basically, I find the best way for me to write is go for walks. So I find that helps me. If I sat down in front of a table now, and I've done things over the years, where people said to me, "You write a poem about this?" I was like, "I can't. I'm not very good at writing things about." If somebody said to me, "You've got to write about trees," and we want this for this project, I couldn't do it. But I just basically go for walks. I put my music on, which is my instrumental film score, and then I just have no idea what I'm going to write about. And actually, a lot of my poems they'll start in the middle, and then I will fill out the beginning and the end. And then I actually won't know what I'm writing about sometimes until I've got 3/4 of the way through the poem. And that's what I'm writing about. And then I will look back at it, actually make sense of it, and probably change it and think, actually, that is what I was trying to get at. So for me, it's an experience and a journey, because for me, to be fair, I don't know what I'm writing about sometimes. I know that sounds weird.
No, it doesn't sound weird to me.
Because I have no preconceived ideas of what I'm going to write about until I just write stuff. And that is based mainly on the emotional music that I'm listening to, and I have kind of an idea in my head, but I don't know what that idea is going to be until I write, and then I will kind of edit the piece, and then I'll change it until I get the idea of what I'm trying to get across. So for me, I could never sit down and say, you've got to write about this. It just wouldn't work. So for me, the kind of method is go for a walk, put your music on, take a pen and pad with you, and basically just write as organically as it comes to you. And that's the process. You do kind of get the emotions, and you have to go to a place in your head to kind of, I would put, to be fair, and it is a weird way to say it, I write from a female perspective.
Oh, I didn't know that.
No, if you look, there's no reason. Well, the reason is
it makes sense now that you've said
controversial it. Females, I tend to feel more emotions than a man, and that goes back to when we talked about a man not showing his emotions when it comes to mental health. I feel that it's easier to look at it from a female perspective when I'm writing. I know that sounds strange to say, but I kind of feel that women feel emotions more than men do. Therefore, if I think of it from a kind of female's view, then I can get that kind of emotion for the piece. And from a guy, writing
a guy will probably be just 2 words, like, I'm sad.
Yeah.
The end.
I need beer.
Basically.
When's the game on?
Right.
We're stereotyping there, but
a little bit.
Yeah. But I just find it easier to do that way, and I've always wrote from a female kind of perspective. So when the poem is about hurt and things like that, it's how I think. It's thinking of how a woman would feel if she was hurt, or a woman would feel. And obviously, I've been writing for a long time, so I can kind of click into that pretty easy now, and write something very easy. But after you've wrote about, I don't know, your poems like 6 books later, it becomes hard to think of something original.
I bet. Yeah. God.
It is hard. But I just I'm always surprising myself, and I'll write stuff, and I've got a lot of unfinished pieces. I've got notebooks full of half-finished poems that I never got round to finishing. And you're writing all the while for your books, and sometimes you're writing 2 or 3 poems at a time. So it just, and then what you find out, the 2 or 3 poems that you're writing at a time actually were 1 poem. So you put them all together. It's just I love the writing experience. I love when I finished a piece, I love thinking, wow, I created that. And then I love the idea of putting it online to see what people think.
Oh yeah.
It's that immediate reaction of, do you love it? Do you hate it? Not that I care personally. I just think I like the fans to see what I'm writing and then see how they feel about it. And then you get retweets and reshares, and people share them on their stories and tag you. And it's just nice. And I think as a writer, that helps you want to write another piece, because you've got an audience. So I think there's many things that keep you going.
Definitely, definitely. I love hearing the process of writers because they're also different. They're also very
Mm,
different. I often start things without knowing where I'm going. It just starts, I'll have an idea of a hairstyle or even the plot. Sometimes the very
mm.
end of the book or the end of the story is the idea, but I love a writer's process. You can't really imitate it. You can, I guess, if you're just trying it out, but it's all your own. So I love hearing that. I love that.
I actually also, when your kind of mind dries up, there are many techniques that we used to do in the workshops, which were like blackout poetry.
Mm.
So you would take a page of prose, and you would go down with a pen and you black out words that you don't want, and then you would have words left, and that would be a poem.
Huh.
So there are many techniques if your basically your brain just isn't wanting to write anything. But there's loads of things like that. And if I'm reading a book, I love reading books and prose. I love reading prose. It's my thing. That's what I've always done. When I'm reading a book, words will just pop out to me. I'll just write them down in a jumble, and then I'll look back at it later and go, "Oh, I can make a poem out of that." And then, so sometimes, even though you could be the best writer in the world, everyone has moments when they just can't write anything.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone has that.
Yeah.
And I get a lot of people saying, "I can't write. I used to be able to write, and I just can't." I said, "Well, don't focus on. Don't worry. Don't
Mm-hmm.
worry too much. Everyone has writer's block. I always have it. I'm just, it's just it's a thing. Life gets in the way.
Mm-hmm.
Your mind just isn't in that space. But people kind of get depressed about it. I think, God, I used to write, and I can't think of it. It's like being a carpenter and you can't cut wood. It is. But I mean, like when I don't write and I can't think of a poem, I feel not depressed, but I feel like, oh, what happens if I can't write poems anymore?
Right.
It can get to you.
Yeah.
Mentally, you can start thinking, but I've had that happen so many times.
Right.
It just phase you go through and you get beyond
Right. It's not like you'll never write another poem
it.
again
No.
for the rest of your life. It'll come back. It'll come back.
Mm.
So James, tell me, what is next for you?
I think I've really enjoyed doing the project, and that's going to go on to big things. And we've got lots of set up big things in London and Australia, and I want to go even further around the world and just do great things with it. And then also, like, as the years have gone by, my work's become more popular. I've started to work with, not that I'm that kind of person, but I've started the kind of level of actors and actresses I've worked with
Mm-hmm.
now. I mean, we started off with radio DJs and then YouTubers, actors and actresses. But
Yeah.
the kind of level I've gone up to now, I've kind of started working with people like David Anders from Vampire Diaries, Alexander Chando from and so many great people, like from people from X-Men, and the kind of level. And the reason we're doing that is because when we work with them, they will suggest people, their friends or actors, and say, "I know someone who would love to do this," and you've gone by word of mouth. So every time we've worked with an actor, it's like another amazing person. And as the years have gone by, the kind of level of people we're working with is amazing. It's like, wow, I've seen that. That's one of my favorite actors, and working with them.
Right.
So I enjoy that side of things. I think I'll continue to do that, continue to write books. We have a fan base and they do buy the books. So we need to kind of bring all those out. And I just basically keep doing the projects and just keep poetry and really helping other people.
Yeah. Before I get to my last two questions, now there may be people, artists, writers that feel like, well, James wrote his first poem in 98. I just wrote my first poem yesterday. It's too late for me. I can't get to that point. Do you think that's true?
I think actually it's perfect time for them now. I mean, I started in 98 with nothing. I mean, there was no social sites, no nothing. And I still made something of it. Now, I mean, look at what they've got now. They've got everything now. And actually, poetry is really in season now. I mean, if you look at schools now, the GCSEs have included poetry back into that. There's a lot of kids on Instagram that love poetry now. I mean, you've only got to search the hashtags on poetry. It's only 20 odd million on poetry. Poetry is huge now. I've been through phases where poetry was nothing, and poetry people thought poetry was people in frilly collars, and speaking in weird language. But poetry, it's really popular now. So actually, they've hit it at a perfect time. Whereas I went through the real rough patches and still came out it now. They've got the perfect opportunity, and they're so connected now with all the social sites. This is the time now. Obviously, we're in COVID, but once they kind of get out of this, go to spoken word, go and start mixing with people in the poetry community. That's how I started. I started mixing the poetry community, sharing my work, liking other people's, start making friends online, search the poetry hashtag, look at people's work, comment on their work. I love this. And they say, thanks. So I write poetry. Would you want to check out my poetry? Make friends. You know, it is the perfect time. I would say it's the opposite. I would say it's the perfect time for them to really start building. And like we said earlier, people, unfortunately, though, want overnight success.
Yeah.
I think you've got to bear that in mind. If you go into it with, I'm going to be famous tomorrow, you're never going to win. But if you go into it with, I'm going to work hard and actually understand that it's going to take me a while, but I'm going to enjoy the journey, then I would say you've got to look at it from that mindset of enjoying the journey, and you're learning so much as you go along. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. I hear that a lot. So there's definitely got to be some truth to it. Well, James, where can people find you on the internet?
To be fair, mainly on Instagram, but because it's the biggest social site in the world. But you can Google search me as well, and basically that'll bring up my website. That'll bring up everything of mine is interlinked anyway. You can get to me from anywhere. So if you're on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or Google, you could just Google me and it will link to everything. So that's the benefits of being on the internet for such a long time.
Yeah. So Mills MC07 on Instagram?
It's Mills MC07, and that is because my favorite film is Seven, which is Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman.
That's a good one.
It's Detective Mills from Brad Pitt, and 07 being seven. So that kind of MC being McInerney. So it's kind of that's where that's come from, and that's been my handle since day one.
I'm glad you explained that. I have wondered. So my last question, James, what is a quote by you that you live by, if any?
I think definitely never give up. That for me, endurance, kind of getting through it. I think I've learned so much that things are not going to happen overnight. So I would always say, keep working at it. And that were the things that were told to me when I started. And people would say, keep at it, don't give up. Probably don't give up. I would, in a nutshell, answers kind of everything. Because if you give up, kind of what else have you got left? As in, what you're giving up to do what? I mean, you might, if you give up, you're just going to sit there and do nothing. So you might as well just carry on. And like I say, you're going to have times where things are not going to go as you planned, but you just got to push through them. And I would say never give up, and always, and to be cliche, follow your dreams, or as the picture says behind you, follow your own path. Is it? What's it say behind you?
Follow your own path. Yes.
I would definitely say I'd say that, because some people give up too easily, and I could have done that a long time ago, and I have tried, but I wasn't allowed to give up, and I had people pushing me on, and I'm glad I did. So I would say never give up, and always keep pushing forward.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you didn't give up. I'm glad you kept pushing forward. I'm excited to see where you have come from to where you are today and where you will be in the next 10 years. I'm excited to see that. I thank you so much for being on today. And I can't wait to catch up with you in the future and see what other awesome things you're doing once the world opens back up.
Fingers crossed. March, hopefully. March.
We hope.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Thank you, James. Bye-bye.
Bye.
The beauty of this generation is technology.
Mm-hmm.
Get online, search YouTube, search stories on Instagram, search just Google. Your story is there online for you to grab. I was a YouTube farmer. A lot of the stuff I learned on YouTube. And then I made relationships with those people and calling them. But yeah, it's there for you. Just don't take no. Be prepared to have something to offer. So I get that phone call 2-3 times a day. Hey, I'm interested in farming. I want you to show me.
Right.
And I'm like, well, all right, well, what are you bringing to the table? At this point, I can't just mentor you just to mentor you. I'm beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to bring something to the table. But yes, children, young people, old people looking to get into a different career, get online. You will find like souls. You have kindred spirits. You'll find them. And you can make money doing it.
Yes.